My name's Linda Bailey. I am the Assistant Director of Graduate Studies and Research and Professional Development at the Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Special Education, operated by the New England Center for Children, MRC NEC. I've been with the company since 2008. I always forget this, 2008, and I moved to Abu Dhabi in 2009, and I worked as a teacher, as a lead teacher of a classroom, as a clinical specialist, and then moved into my current role in the Graduate Studies and Research Department. And I joined the Professional Development or Training Department this year to join the two departments together. So when I was starting out in the Graduate Studies and Research Department, it's kind of a little bit of a disclaimer for this research, is that this research was conducted back in 2015. So I'm a little bit fuzzy on some of the personal details and the experience. So I'm hoping that I'm able to sort of tell the story in a clear enough way and that my memory serves me correctly on all of these details. All right. And then this specific research was also presented at the 2016 European Association for Behavior Analysis, the EABA conference in Sicily. And it was part of a panel presentation at that conference. And then we were able to publish the results of this study in the European Journal of Behavior Analysis. Okay, so just kind of to start off, why are we sharing this article? This is another disclaimer on my part where I know at the end of Journal Club, we go through all of the 7 dimensions of ABA and we kind of critique the research and the article a little bit. So please, just because I was involved, don't hold back when providing your feedback on the article itself and the research. So we know nothing's perfect. We know that there are flaws in the study. There are future directions, limitations, as all studies do have. So as maybe you read the article already, or as you listen in these next several minutes, start thinking about some of those 7 dimensions and how well or maybe how it could have improved. So another reason we wanted to use this article today was that this research was conducted in Abu Dhabi, and we really want to inspire you all to conduct your own research and to publish. Like Dr. Michelle was saying, we really want people from our region to do the research because you're doing it, and then just do it in a way that allows you to present and publish and get involved in reach out to people like Dr. Michelle who are able to kind of lead you in the direction so that you can help disseminate our science and just show the world how well we're doing out here. And it doesn't have to be complicated. So you'll see also in this study that it's a very, very simple research study. The procedures were relatively easy to follow, and the skill itself was simplified. So I'm hoping that you'll walk away from this hour just thinking that you are inspired to do your own research. Okay, so we've already touched on all of this in the last hour, but even though the BCBA is no longer going to be an international certification, there is a continued need for the cultural competency, awareness, training, and service provision. And just for all practitioners and service providers of ABA, they should be aware of all of this. Now, I did a really quick search, and so I know this is not going to be all inclusive. It's probably a very low estimate of the number of resources that are available, but just using the journal articles or the journals that we have accessible from the BACB Gateway, And I did a very, very quick search of the last 5 years and articles that were published that mentioned either culture or cultural and bilingual. And you see the numbers are relatively low. They're highest in behavior analysis and practice, which doesn't surprise me. But it's something that we need to continue contributing to the literature because we do have such knowledge that we can share with the global community. Additionally, there were the changes to the BACB ethics code. So if you are a BCBA or you're RBT or you're studying to be one, you are aware of the new ethics code. And this code was added most recently that targets cultural responsiveness and diversity. So, and they also added these core principles, just kind of pulled out some ones that really do fit into this idea of just research and dissemination on a global and cultural scale. So benefiting others, treating others with compassion, dignity, and respect, behaving with integrity, ensuring competence. So, even though you are a behavior analyst living and operating in the UAE, just think about all of the diverse cultures that you are going to be providing services for. So even if you feel like you might be you might be in a homogenous community, just think about one family to another, how different they may be. So it's really important that we do keep all of this in our minds when we're providing services for our clients. And we do need to be aware and responsive and practice some of that cultural humility. So these are all things that have been added in addition to just the awareness that we have of these situations. All right, some other considerations. Now, these are just things that, I've read about, I've heard about on forums, read about in research articles and research journals, that there is a bigger push for some of these additional considerations, such as really ensuring that you're getting some sort of social validity measure. We want to know that what we're doing is important. Demographic reporting. This is something that isn't included in every research article that you might read. So there's this push to include different, like just reporting on the demographics of your clients so that we do have a record showing that we are trying to target different cultural and ethnic and racial groups. We just want to include everybody when we are doing our research, because in order to be applied across the general population, the research can't be done with just a small subset of a population. And of course, just doing more research in itself. Okay, now I'm going to just introduce you to video modeling. I'm sure you've all heard of it. You've probably used it. You've seen it. It's been around since the 1980s. I remember reading my first video modeling article about the skills being video recorded on a VHS cassette tape. Some of you might not realize, they might not know what that is, but we've been utilizing this teaching procedure for several decades, and it has been shown to be effective in teaching a wide variety of skills, from shopping, self-help, safety, social skills, vocational work. So if you can videotape it, then you can use a video modeling. And as the video modeling research has expanded, it's taken on some new terminology, taken on some of the physical technology has advanced. So there are different types of video modeling that can be utilized. So some of these might include simultaneous, where the performer is performing the skill at the same time as the video. This might often happen on a loop, where the video is on a continuous loop, or it's on a loop and they have to do it at the same time. Then there's continuous, where you are on a loop. So the video would be playing on a loop and you could do the skill, maybe the video moved on and you have to pause and wait for it to get back to that part of the skill and then pick up and follow along. Delayed video modeling. This is sometimes called video priming, where you watch the video and then you go off and you do the task. So there's going to be that delayed sample when you're doing that skill. And then video prompting, which you might take small sections of a skill and you would watch that piece of the video, do the skill, hit next, watch the second piece of the video, do the skill. So it's a little bit kind of like simultaneous and delayed mixed. Other considerations of the types of video modeling could be the point of view. So there's the first person point of view, where the video is filmed as if the performer is completing the task. So you might, if you're the person videoing, creating the video model, you would have the camera like at your eye level while you're filming your hands performing a task. And then there's the third person point of view, where it's just like watching a video of someone performing a skill. And another consideration is who the model is in the video. So you could be another person or it could be yourself, as in the performer. So you might video your participant doing a skill. Perhaps they're being prompted through it, or maybe it's something that they're using additional aids to perform the skill, but then they are expected to perform the skill independently without any sort of aids or the video itself. So those are some considerations when looking at video modeling. And when I talk about video modeling, I just like to talk about it as in it's something that we've probably all experienced personally ourselves. So very common tools these days that I'm sure most people are familiar with are YouTube or TikTok tutorials. So these are examples of video modeling. So I remember I learned how to braid my hair watching YouTube. I definitely use a lot of cooking videos and how-tos when I'm trying to make a new recipe. There's lots of dance TikToks that people learn how to do. So these are all examples of video modeling that people use every day, and we can take that and use it as a tool to teach our students or our clients how to perform skills as well. So some benefits to video modeling. You can use video modeling to teach skills that might be difficult to practice in real life. So for example, I remember a very old article that I read was teaching, well, the shopping, of course, but crossing the road. You might have a video model of teaching someone how to cross the road safely, to look both ways, to make sure that there's no traffic, and then safely cross the road. Shopping, I believe it was maybe 1985 article where they were performing the skill of shopping in a small convenience store and how to pay. So I imagine it in my head as a situation where it's a student who doesn't have the ability or the opportunity to go out shopping on a regular basis in a situation that is, very safe and controlled for them. So in order to assist with this skill, the researchers made a video model of store that he might go into, picking a few items off the shelf and putting it into his basket, going to the counter, unloading his basket, paying for the items, and taking his bags and walking out. So if maybe you just don't have access to a shop because you live in a very small community or a very rural area. So it's just something as simple as that you could just create the video yourself, have him practice in a mock situation, and then take it out into the real world. Videos are very easy to create, especially nowadays. We all have on our phones a video camera that we can use, um, editing software within our phones. So these even, it's just getting easier and easier to create these videos. It's also very portable, especially now. We can have our students watching the video model on our phones or iPads as they perform this skill. So for example, if it was a shopping skill, we could create the video and we're practicing it in a contrived setting, maybe in a classroom, and then we take it out into the real world and we could turn it into one of those video prompting situations where, okay, he's picked out what he wants to buy at the store. He can't quite remember what to do next. He can consult his iPad and rewatch the video of what to do next. So our technology, as the technology advances, it's becoming more and more available as a tool. Video modeling also gives you a model that can be repeated as many times as necessary, and it will be the same every single time. So while there is benefit to variability in teaching in terms of, being able to generalize the skill, having that identical model repeated to me as I'm learning the skill can be really beneficial if I need that type of model. So that's another benefit for video modeling. And it can be created based on need. So if I need the model to be from to look a certain way, or whether it's myself or a family member or a sibling, maybe my favorite character, I could even get, maybe someone's great at animating and they could use my favorite character to perform a skill that I don't know how to do. And modifications can be done very easily. And then, of course, video models can also be nonverbal. They could be verbal. There could be captions or translation included into the videos. So just all of the ways that we have available to modify these videos to be specific to the needs of our clients is just a really great benefit, and it's a good teaching tool that we can use. Okay, now we're going to move into the article and the methods itself. So for this research, we had 3 male Emirati students participating. Their ages were 9, 7, and 15, and they were students at an unnamed day school program for UAE national students with autism. The target behavior was wearing the gutra and a gal. So it's similar to as you see in this picture here, and a 7-step task analysis was developed by the authors after observing a videoed Arab Muslim male demonstrate the skill. The research sessions took place in an observation room located in the student's school, and the post-intervention took place in the students' individual classrooms. The dependent variable were the number of steps out of 7 that were completed independently and accurately. We collected data in vivo live by the primary experimenter, and then IOA was conducted by a secondary experimenter from video recordings of the sessions. So IOA, or Inter-Observer Agreement, it was conducted for at least 33% of sessions, and it was calculated by dividing the total number of agreements on step completion by total number of agreements plus disagreements times 100. So Inter-Observer Agreement, if you're not quite sure of what that is, it's just the extent to which at least two independent observers observe the same results. So if I scored 6 out of 7 complete steps completed independently and accurately on session 7, and a second person independently viewed that same session, and the IOA or the agreement is how much we agreed on the steps completed correctly. I hope that makes sense. So the IOA for our students, so for Mohammed, we recorded IOA on 43% of sessions. IOA was 100%. For Ahmed, we performed IOA on 50% of sessions with an agreement of 98%, with the range 86 to 100. For Salam, we recorded IOA on 37% of sessions with agreement at 97%. So procedural integrity is the extent to which the experimenter accurately performed the sessions. So whether the appropriate materials were there, if the materials were presented in the correct position or timing, if there were any prompts required, if they were performed correctly and at the right time, and if reinforcement was presented appropriately and if the session was terminated appropriately. So the procedural integrity was recorded for 97.5% of sessions, and IOA for that was 100%. Okay, our experimental design was a non-concurrent multiple probe across participants. So what that looks like, we'll go into the details of the results a little bit later, but this is just a picture of the graph. So if you look at the non-concurrent multiple probes, so in a multiple baseline design, you do have that stair step within the graph. So we have our 3 participants, and if you look at, so the top panel, we performed 1 baseline, and then we started the intervention. For the second participant, we performed 2, and the third 4 baseline probes. So it's non-concurrent because we didn't perform at the same. So if Mohammed was on session 1 and then moved on to training, and then Ahmed was on session 1 and session 2 in baseline, they weren't necessarily happening on the same days or at the same times. It was just as we were able to gain access to our participants, so that's why it's non-concurrent. The mastery criteria for this skill was for the participants to complete 100% of the steps independently and accurately for 2 consecutive sessions. And post-intervention, we wanted it to be conducted in the absence of the video model, and we wanted there to be 100% independent and accurate responding for 2 consecutive sessions. So it would be to master the skill, 2 sessions of 100% completion, and then we would remove the video model and to see if they could still perform the skill. And we would want 2 consecutive sessions without the video model. And then we would perform a 3rd or a 5th session where it was no video model in a second setting and with a second experimenter. So for baseline, the baseline was conducted in the absence of the video model. So what this looked like is that the material, so the gutra and the agal, the gutra is the white cloth and the agal is the black ring that goes on top. So we would place the materials in front of the student and we gave the instruction to wear the gutra. No prompts or reinforcement were provided, and the session would be discontinued if there was no response within 30 seconds or 2 minutes elapsed without completing the chain correctly, and it would be discontinued at the first incorrect step. So when you look at the results, you'll see that most students either completed maybe 1 step independently and then it was discontinued because they made an error, or if it was 0 steps independent, that means they just didn't respond within the first 30 seconds of the session, or they just waited 2 minutes without doing anything, which was not as likely. So the task analysis, these are just the 7 steps that we wrote for the skill where, so the sessions, you'll see it in the picture in the next slide where the gutra was placed flat on a table with the base closest to the student. And I'm calling it the base because it kind of looks like a triangle. So I just said the base of the gutra would be closest to the student. They would pick it up with two hands and either flip it over their head or twist it around. And then it would be so that the base rested on the forehead. They would take the front corners in front of the body, kind of make it even, adjust it at the, adjust the forehead, pick up the agal, place it on the head, and then toss each of the little, I call them tails, toss the sides of the gutra over their shoulders. And these two steps, number 6 and 7, could be completed left first or right first. We didn't count that as an error if they completed left or right first. So for example, we've got step 1, pick up the gutra, put it, either flip it over or wrap it around the head, adjust it so the sides are even, adjust at the forehead, place the agal, flip and flip. So for training, so after baseline was conducted, we started the training sessions. So with the training, we provided the video model. So the video model was recorded in the third person point of view. There were no verbal cues given in the video. The model was an adult male Emirati, so not the person in the previous pictures. He was not the model in the video that we showed the students. We showed the model completing the 7 steps of the chain. Total duration of the video was only 18 seconds. So the skill was performed slowly, but still it was only 18 seconds. And the video was played 2 times. So these sessions took place in the observation room in the student's school. The instruction to watch the video in Arabic was given. The videos were played. And after viewing, the laptop was removed and then the materials were placed. So we didn't have everything out yet. It was just the video on the computer, the laptop was removed, and then the materials were placed out in front of the student. So they were given the instruction to wear the gutra, and similar to baseline, the session would be discontinued if there was no response in the first 30 seconds or 2 full minutes elapsed with no responding. Self-correction was permitted and was scored as an independent accurate step. So for example, if the student performed through steps 1 and 2, but then they didn't sort of adjust the sides to make them even, and they started to continue with future steps, but then they went back and adjusted the sides to make them even, we would still score that as a plus or as an independent correct response. So no prompts were provided and no reinforcement was provided during these sessions. At the end of, at the end of the sessions, there was a very brief praise statement saying, thanks for working with me. And then they would be able to go and do an activity that they preferred or return to their classroom for a short break. Then we had an issue with one of our students who just wasn't quite getting it. So we decided to use a remedial procedure called tag teach, sometimes just called tag. Some people might call it clicker training because they do use the tag or the tag point or the click as a conditioned reinforcer. So I took all of these images from the website tagteach.com. They do have a lot of resources available, so please check them out if this is something you're interested in. And the reason we went with this was we didn't want to interrupt the training with delivering an edible or delivering some sort of preferred activity at the step that was being trained because he wasn't able to make progress on that step. So the benefits of something like the tag or the click is that you can condition it as a reinforcer. by pre-session pairing with a preferred reinforcer, like a primary reinforcer, like an edible. And then the tag itself can then just serve as the reinforcer. It's very clear and simple, and it provides immediate feedback. So the tag teaching it's been used a lot in things like sports, dance. There's really interesting videos on their website and also on YouTube of using tag teaching for different sports skills. So another procedure that we added was graduated guidance. I just took this off of this website. If you're interested in some more details about graduated guidance, but this is a physical prompting. So it's a physical prompt that was gradually faded. So if we saw that the student was making an error, we would go in at a more intrusive prompt, so maybe a hand over hand physical prompt, but then reduce that prompt within session to allow for more independent responding. So I just wanted to introduce those two terms because that is what we're going to talk about next. So we had the student, Mohammed, who made consistent errors on step 2, and he made no attempts at self-correction. So at this point, at session 29, so a good handful of sessions in, we added the graduated guidance and the tag teaching. So what this looked like is that there was a pre-selected edible item that was delivered for correctly completing step 2. So we took step 2 and we paired it with the tag teaching and the edible and kind of trained it in isolation because it was the only step that he kept making consistent errors on or kept like stopping him from completing the rest of the skill. We decided to add it just for the skill alone. So after being able to use these remedial procedures of the tag teaching and the graduated guidance on step 2, we were able to isolate that skill, train it until he had 2 consecutive independent accurate responses at step 2, and then we just continued with video modeling as previously described. So post-intervention, as I kind of explained before, we did probes without the video model. So the mastery criteria was the 2 consecutive sessions of 100% accuracy and independence with the video. Then we probed it without the video. So again, it looked pretty identical to the sessions, just no video was provided prior to presenting the materials. These were still conducted in that same observation room with the primary experimenter. And after those 2 sessions were conducted, the 3rd probe was conducted in the student's classroom with a novel experimenter, but it was actually a teacher from the classroom. So novel as an experimenter, but not a novel person to the student. So for one of the participants, Salam, we had to retrain after the first probe session, and then we just repeated. We'll show you those results in just a moment. So we also conducted a social validity survey. It's not perfect, but I'll let you give your feedback on that during our discussion. So we were able to interview or provide the social validity survey to 8 parents, 8 Emirati parents, 7 mothers and 1 father, who attended a parent training workshop on video modeling. And then we just gave them the 2-question questionnaire. So unfortunately, the parents of the actual participants did not attend the workshop, and we weren't able to get their response on the actual skill itself. So the 2 questions that were asked were, teaching my son to wear gutra and a gal is important, and they were asked to rate it from 1 to 5, 1 being not important to 5 being very important. And the second question was, the video modeling procedure is an acceptable strategy for teaching my child. So 1 ranging not acceptable to 5 is very acceptable. So for question 1, all of the parents scored a 5. And for question 2, we had a score of 4.75, which ranged from responses of 4 or 5. Okay, so here are the results. So you'll see we have the session numbers are located along the x-axis, and the number of steps completed independent and accurately are on the y-axis. So just a little note, so even though there were 7 steps in our task analysis, the data points do not correlate with the step of the TA. It was the number of steps. So for example, if you were if you completed 5 steps independently, that doesn't mean the student completed steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then didn't complete 6 and 7. It just means that they might have completed 1, 2, 3, skipped 4 and 5, and then did 6 and 7, the step 6 and 7. So that's just something to note when you're looking at the data. So on the top panel, we have Mohammed, who he was our student that needed to have the remedial procedures introduced. So if you see, his responding stayed at around 3 steps completed independently. So if memory serves, he was able to pick up the gutra, he would put it on, but then he wasn't adjusting it. So sometimes it would be like hanging off the back of his head or like covering his face completely, but he would still pick up the agal and put it on top. So excuse me, he was just kind of it wasn't on the appropriate place on his forehead. So, but then he would, put the agal and he would try to flip over the 2 sides. So he was still completing the task, but because he just couldn't do that step correctly, that was sort of hindering some of the other steps from being completed, but he was still able to complete a few others. So that's why it shows him completing an average of like 3 steps independently and accurately, but he was retrained on step 2 specifically. So the remediation, after we did the remediation, we saw a slow increase in his responding. And then he was able to master the skill pretty quickly after the remediation was introduced. For the other students, they were able to perform the skill pretty quickly and pretty accurately. So for Ahmed and then Salam, as I mentioned earlier, he mastered the skill. So if you see at sessions 19 and 20, he mastered the skill with 100% accuracy with the video. When we removed the video, he wasn't able to perform the skill and had to retrain with the video. Once he retrained, he very quickly mastered the skill again. And when we removed the video again, he was able to perform 2 consecutive sessions with 100% independence and accuracy. So for Mohammed and Ahmed, when they did the 3rd probe in the new setting to the experiment, so their classroom with the teacher, Mohammed and Ahmed were able to maintain 100% accuracy. Salam was performing at 6 out of 7 steps, accurate and independent. There were no maintenance data collected for these, unfortunately. Okay, now's the fun part where we get to do a little bit of discussion. So I hope you were thinking about it. I hope that you give lots of great feedback. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Please, please, please don't hold back on giving feedback on what you think. And we're just going to go through the 7 dimensions of get a cab. All right. Okay. So sorry. I wonder, Dr. Michelle, am I able to see the chat
Yes.
And okay. Can you still see?
We can see your slides, but it's not in presenter view. But it's
Okay.
okay. You should be able to
read the responses for you.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Nusaibah.
Let's see if I go back just so it looks nicer. Can I still see you? Oh, yes. Okay, great. All right. Generality, what do you all think?
So when we say generality, that's the definition. We're thinking of, is the behavioral change that we have seen, does it stay over time? Is it durable? Is it possible that it appears in different environments? Does it spread across behaviors? So what do you think? Was this demonstrated in the article that Linda has shared with us? Please type in the chat. We'll give you a few minutes. Okay, so the first response says no. We would appreciate maybe giving a little bit of explanation why you think yes or why you think no, but thank you. Okay, so for the comment, not enough. Sorry, I'll read the comment. So the first response is no, because there are not enough fathers. It would be interesting to know if they consider video modeling to be appropriate, and to also knowing if they can perform the task independently at home would be interesting. Okay, so the part about the home, Linda, what do you think of that first response we got from the chat?
Yes, so this is always, I was thinking about it from both perspectives when I was thinking about these answers myself, is that the skill I think could be general, but the research could probably have improved on this. So we could have looked at, let me consult my notes. So, the generalization itself, it was in the classroom of the student with a known teacher, and there was no follow-up on any additional skills that maybe this could have generalized to. And going back to the comment we had earlier, was that, oh gosh, what was I going to say about the social validity?
That not having enough fathers.
Yeah, just getting a little bit more input from the specific parents themselves and on the skill.
We do have other responses that say, yes, we can see generality there because we have seen that it's multiple participants being able to complete the skill, and that it's in different classrooms, different therapists. So that is another sign of generality or generalization. Thank you. We have someone else who thinks no, that we did not see that in the article. In terms of people, yes. Setting, yes. Stimuli, no. And I think this goes also back to Sharifa sharing that there are different ways of wearing the ghatra. So I think those 2 points kind of go together. And then we have, it wasn't generalized to the place it was most relevant. So maybe that goes back to your comment, Meritki. Sorry if I butchered your name. I'm sorry about that. But it goes back, Maraika. Okay, thank you. So it goes back to your point about it not being followed up at home to see if they performed it at home or not. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
For
we
sharing.
kind of did the bare minimum for the research because we could have done much more.
Thank you, Linda. And I think we can move to the next dimension.
Oh, let's see. Oh, there we go. There we go. Sorry, let me move some of my boxes. So effective. Interventions are effective when they improve a behavior in a practical matter. What do you all think?
So the previous one we scored half a point, let's say, for the effectiveness. First response is yes. What do you guys think? Yes, as this is relevant to the culture. Thank you. Again, yes. Yes, I guess
Okay.
we don't have anyone who disagrees. Big yes,
Awesome.
okay. It is
Excellent.
important
Thank
to
you for
agree.
that.
Let
Yes.
me just,
Oh, Sharifa, I hope you're keeping track of all the points for us.
she gave us a full point for this one. Dr. Sarah
Excellent.
says, I like that you kept going until it was effective. You kept adding additional interventions as needed. And then we have, yes, it's very effective from Nilima and can be modeled easily at home. I love that. So going back to talking about applying it at home, that it is easy to share this with the parents to apply it at home. And then Jocelyn says, I love the remedial part when the child did not respond well. So great. Thank you all so much. And that takes us to the next dimension.
Technological. The procedures were described clearly and concisely so that others may implement the procedures accurately. This is
Okay, so we
something,
have,
some yeses. I'm just consulting again my notes, just double checking that we do have some resounding yeses, which is really nice. I will say though, you say, Jocelyn said very clear steps on the TA. However, the TA was not included in the article itself. So that could be something that really could have helped, whether either access to the video, access to the TA. So those could be really helpful. Oh no, I'm wrong. We did have the list of steps, so that's good.
and we have, yes, it was systematically done and recorded and can be replicated. Most of the answers are yes.
Excellent. Now, I wrote down a question. What about the tag teach and graduated guidance? For those, the remedial procedures, do you think you could have replicated those easily just by reading the article? Okay, good. We got a yes. So I'm even trying to remember what we did. I was trying to like scroll through my mind because unfortunately most of our videos were lost in a server malfunction. So this was a couple of years after everything was published, but I wasn't able to go back and look at the actual sessions from this time. Graduated guidance, same as total task. Well, in terms of a task analysis, very similar, but graduated guidance as a prompting procedure for like a single skill is a little bit different. So for example, if I was trying to get the student to adjust the gutra on his forehead, I would sort of start like hand over hand. And if he started to adjust it himself, I could very quickly back off. So it's not a very, okay, I'm going to do 3 sessions doing hand over hand, and then I'm going to reduce my my physical prompt. It's within one single session or episode of that prompting, I could fade off completely within that one session if necessary. So graduated guidance is it's a little bit difficult because it's not precise when you're explaining it. Um, but it's a very easy skill to do. It's just hard to like tell you you have to do A, B, and C because it's a procedure that you do across one session kind of as you get to know the learner.
We do have an input that says it was paired with an edible but can't be replicated if edibles were not reinforcing.
Correct.
She said the tag, I mean.
Ah, yes. So if the tag was not reinforcing. Yes, that's a good point. Okay, sorry. I feel like I was so afraid that we would have too much time, and now we're running out of time. I talk too much. Applied. So a behavior change is applied when it enhances and improves the everyday life of a learner and those closest to the learner. by improving a socially significant behavior. What do you think?
We're getting guesses across the
Yeses?
board.
All right. My answer is a little. And please, if anyone has some thoughts about how this might be improved for future research, or I'm thinking of even the ages of our students. I know, I believe Sharifa was saying earlier that there are many, many ways that you can wear the gutra, and the agal. And I don't know if the way that we were having the students learn to wear the gutra was something that's used every day, or for students as young as 7, if that's something that they would practice or have in their everyday wardrobe, for example. Sharifa or Nusaibah might be able to answer that a little bit.
Sharifa is already saying that different events had different ways. I think like just wearing a igal for a 7 years old might not be the best, just because they need a lot of coordination to keep it on their head. With children just running around. I mean, it would be appropriate, for example, let's say in occasional celebrations like Eid, etc., that they would wear the igal. But in day-to-day, children would most likely wear a hamdaniya, where like they just tie it around their head. But still, I think that requires more skills as opposed to just putting on the ghatra and igal. So I think that is another thing that we need to take into consideration.
Yes, and that was, I believe, the 2 students who had the award-winning poster. I know at least one of the students replicated this with the hamdaniya, with tying the hamdaniya, and she had some success in teaching that skill. And that was through virtual learning as well, virtual teaching. So I'm glad to see that it was expanded upon. All right, moving on to, yes, I would have loved to have seen if they could have maintained the skill for future at home and for future events at school. So what about conceptually systematic interventions? Were they consistent with the principles demonstrated in the literature and research? It's important that practitioners continue to use research-based techniques and avoid using any shortcuts in our teaching methods.
Yes, it's across the board.
Excellent. Analytic. Was the practitioner able to show that whenever they applied the certain variable, the behavior was produced, and whenever it was removed, the behavior's lost?
So we
All
got
right.
some yeses.
And my answer to this was as much as you can with a multiple baseline design. Good question or good comment. Not mentioned about the preference assessment for tag teaching. I don't recall if it's in the article itself, but we might have just used a pre-selected item from a preference assessment that was done in the classroom. So it was the edible item was selected based off of a preference assessment. It just, I don't believe one was done specific for the research. It was one that was done for his clinical team. Okay, sorry, I don't want to run out of time. Behavioral. So the behavior chosen must be observable and measurable. Okay, I think that one's a pretty simple one. So, I mean, he can wear one. He might not be able to actively put one on. Excellent. Okay. And just thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Linda.
Thank you,
And just
Nusaibah, to the Journal Club.
And thank you everyone for attending. Please, if you want to present in our next session, we provide one of those sessions on a quarterly basis. So if you are interested, please contact any of us, myself, Sharifa Yatim, or Manal Aryani. You can contact us through the Journal Club link survey that we have shared in the chat. And see you next time. Dr. Michelle, do you have anything to say?
Hi, yes, I just put all of the links that you will need in the chat. So everyone, please take a couple of minutes to fill out the evaluation survey. I've also put the link for the BACB CEUs, and I've also put the correct link to join the ABA Journal Club. And I think that's it. Nusaibah, you never introduced yourself, but Nusaibah is one of the founders of the ABA Journal Club. So that was my apologies to Nusaibah. I should have added her as a panelist. So apologies to you, Nusaibah. And thank you to the ABA Journal Club for continuing to host such wonderful events. And thank you to Linda for a wonderful presentation. And final thanks to the audience for being so actively engaged and sticking with us all the way up to 7 p.m. We know it's a long so to come and stick it out for both sessions is really greatly appreciated. So yeah, final words to you.
Thank you for having me.